All right, everybody, welcome to the Sincast. This is Chris Atkinson from CinemaSins, joined as always by the voice of CinemaSins, Jeremy Scott.
Hello.
And from Music Video Sins, Barrett Scher.
Hi.
And we have a very special episode here today.
Yeah.
We have the Maltins, as in Leonard Maltin and Jessie Maltin.
Yay.
Double the Maltin, double the fun.
Right. From Maltin On Movies, which we just did.
Yeah.
And now we're turning it on them. We're turning the focus on them.
You may have seen us trivia compete against Leonard and Jessie Maltin on the Schmodown. You may have heard Jessie guest on our podcast a few months back via Skype. And now they are in town this week for the Nashville Film Festival. And we were not going to let them get away without having them both guest again in studio.
Yes.
And boy, I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always great to have guests who are in some form part of the industry that we're in and everything. We've had like some interesting guests just in the film industry, like Simser, who does the storyboards and stuff like that. Having actual movie critics and people who know and love movies, that's a big, huge thing for us, and especially someone I've seen forever on TV and used to at Hollywood 27, used to have the Leonard Maltin home video guide. Me and a guy used to play a game with it, used to try to guess the year, the actors in the movie, all that type of stuff. That was the IMDb before the IMDb.
No kidding.
Of course, the IMDb was still around, but we couldn't access it at work. You know, it was that book was the IMDb for us. Glad you could join us.
Well, we're very glad to be here.
Yeah.
I think I speak for both of them.
No, I'm good.
At least one of you is glad to be here.
I love listening to your podcast, Maltin On Movies. I'm
so good at plugging.
Yeah, I feel like the guests that you have really, really open up to you guys in a way that I don't hear that anywhere else. And you don't get to see. You had somebody like Al Pacino. I've never seen an interview with Al Pacino before. And he just opens up like he's just a normal guy and everything. A weird. Imagine that.
We were thrilled beyond words, is all I can say. I can't pretend to have been blasé. Now, I have interviewed him before, multiple times, actually, but not in a long while.
Yeah.
But I knew that we'd always hit it off and had a good conversation. I know that he likes to talk. You don't have to drag things out of him.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Those things I knew going in. But past that, nothing.
Nope.
And he was promoting his documentary about his stage production of Salome, which he did 8 years ago, something like that, and where he discovered Jessica Chastain.
Wow.
And this documentary is her first, the film of the play, the filmed record of that production.
Is Wild Salome is the documentary.
Right.
And then Salome is the film.
So
And
it was
they
her
did
first
a double
film.
release kind of a thing, so you could see.
And he directed it.
Yes. So the documentary is essentially the making of both the stage production and also the film, and then the film is just the film. And
That's enough about that. Anyway, you got Al Pacino in our studio.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we never dreamt that we would ever bring up The Godfather or Dog Day Afternoon or Serpico or
we
any
didn't know
of those
what
things.
to do be honest. We didn't know.
The man is filled with stories.
But we didn't know. I can always read my dad, and I can usually tell where he's going or what he wants to ask. And in this case, I could see that we were both nervous because you don't want to say, "So, how about The Godfather?" You don't want to do that to him because, first of all, that's not what he's there for. He's there for this, but. When he just naturally started going into these stories, I looked over at my dad and we were kind of like, "Oh my God!"
Well, him talking about meeting the actual Frank Serpico and all of that. That's just gold. And like I said, you don't get to hear that very often. I don't think I've ever seen an interview with Pacino ever. And if you do see an interview, it's because he's there to just promote his thing. And then
you get these Tonight Show or something like that, 3-4 minute sound bites, and you guys are doing this long form interview process.
That's what we love about it. I mean, I've been on the other side of that microphone, that table. As an author promoting my books, over the years, and I know that it's such a blessing when you get to talk for more than 6 or 7 minutes.
Sure, yeah.
And that's what we get to do with our guest is just talk. in a relaxed setting, and it seems to give them the ability to relax, and they don't feel uptight talking to us.
I think part of it is it's my dad, and his reputation is not one of a person who's going to attack you, come at you with questions you don't want to be asked.
That would be hilarious, by the way, if that was the podcast. You got Al Pacino, and you're like, all right, I'm talking about Serpico, all the dirty details. What drugs did you do?
If only. No, but that's definitely, other than just being why they say yes. Obviously, they say yes because they get to talk to him. But then they come in and they're not nervous in the same way I think they might be. And then you talk to someone for an hour, and a lot of times they'll apologize to us. They'll be mid-story because they're so used to having to talk in sound bites that we've had
I'll say, I'm sorry, I'm going on.
I'm sorry.
Go on.
Yeah,
no, please.
We're here for you to keep telling us. Yeah, it's wild. And I do think the father-daughter dynamic also has an effect, which I didn't even think about.
No, they seem to respond to that.
Yeah.
I was about to say, you shouldn't sell yourself short on this, because you do have that fangirl type of thing going on there, where you're like, I love what you do and everything, and I think it sets them at ease a little bit that they're able to know that we're among friends here. I will be able to talk about whatever I want to talk about.
We want them to have a good time. I mean, that's the other thing is you want them to enjoy themselves, and it's such a nice. It's nice, especially at the end if we don't know somebody. Obviously, some people we have a bit of a history with, or my dad has a history with them, but it's really nice, like Jordan Peele, who we didn't know beforehand. You'd met in passing a couple of times because of the circuit, of the award circuit. Then we got to sit with him, and he's very shy, and he's very quiet.
Very sweet.
Very, very sweet, and obviously very, very smart. And then as we got him talking, he started to do the Obama impression.
Oh, yeah.
I lost my shit. I couldn't. I was laughing. And our engineer, he's across from me. And so I often look at him when I'm laughing, because I know if he is too, then it's like, okay, we're having the same moment. But at the end of it, you've now formed a relationship. And they may not remember you. That's not, for what this is all they're doing all the time. It's exhausting. But at the end, you take this photo together, and it's just like you kind of get to capture it for a minute, that lightning in a bottle of like, we just had this really, really nice conversation together, and you feel like you know each other. And then you may not see them when it comes to award circuit stuff, or even actors in general. We don't know when we're going to see any of these people ever again. You don't know.
But we've captured that little piece of lightning in a bottle.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's very satisfying.
Yeah.
And you bring up the Jordan Peele episode, and this brings me to my next question. It's sort of a roundabout way to get to this question, but you had a story about Joe Dante on that podcast about how you ended up in Gremlins 2, because Jordan Peele did the Gremlins 2 sketch on Key and Peele and everything. So funny. And that's a great story, by the way. And you can repeat it here if you like, but I suggest you go and listen to the Jordan Peele podcast. But does that ever become a problem for you as a movie reviewer when you're interviewing these people, and then you review a movie that you don't like? Or do they know the game at this point?
The smart ones know the game. But some of them are driven more by emotion than by, the rational part of their brain.
Wait. Are you saying that there are filmmakers in Hollywood that are emotional? Sorry, go on.
Certainly not actors.
No.
Generally, we invite people on whose work we like overall.
Yeah.
And so every now and then there'll be an awkward situation where we haven't seen their new film yet when we commit to doing the podcast. And if we happen to see it and don't like it, we just don't talk about it. We plug it as we're supposed to do. It's a fair game. You give quid pro quo. So we'll give them a plug at the beginning and at the end of the show. And then we'll talk about everything else they've done.
Yeah.
And that's how we duck and weave around that.
But
and we try to avoid that when we can.
You've got your things about not being friends.
Well, I learned a long, long time ago when I came out to Hollywood and started working for Entertainment Tonight in the early 80s. You can read about the early 80s. It's online. Google it. But I was there, and it wasn't a great decade. Anyway, people are nostalgic for a decade I'd rather sort of sweep under the carpet.
I was born in the 80s.
It's not all bad, I guess.
That's
Your
the highlight.
Your 80s weren't that bad, man.
No. The highlight was Jessie coming along. That was the pinnacle of the decade, believe me. But I learned pretty early on, and I had a few wise people set me straight. I couldn't become friends with these people. And there were opportunities where I could have pursued it, where we really did hit it off, and we might have had coffee afterwards. We might have seen each other in some social setting. I don't do it. It is too awkward. Roger Ebert always claimed he had no problem with it because he used to do the reviews all week long and then fill the entire Sunday Chicago Sun-Times, one full page, with interviews. And he claimed not to have a conflict with that. I don't know how that worked, but he made it work for him.
Yeah, I don't know how you would do it either. I mean, it's one of the sort of the issues we would have if we were to ever to like suddenly befriend a director in Hollywood and everything. I mean, I guess we sort of have, but I think they kind of know
the ones that get what we're doing. In fact, they've called it out, specifically saying that, I'm so glad that they did this. This was hilarious, that kind of thing. And those are the people that you would want to have more of a working relationship with, or even a personal.
They're almost begging us to do the videos on there. But that's few and far between. What other questions do you guys got? I know I got a million. But
one I thought of on the way down, because we're interviewing Leonard Maltin and his daughter, and I love both of you.
It's Leonard Maltin.
But this man is like a hero to me. And so I don't want, just like you, I don't want to ask the Serpico questions. I don't want to ask the...
But you can.
Go ahead.
But I thought of one I don't think you get... I don't think you get this all the time, which probably means you do. I want to know, what are some Maltin family movies? Like, my family watches White Christmas together every year since I was born, every Christmas season.
We're Jewish, so we're not allowed to do that, actually.
Well,
no, only kidding.
I'm just kidding.
I'm not suggesting White Christmas should be
She's
your
having
movie.
a go at you.
But what are your go-to Maltin family movies where you sit down together and enjoy them on an annual, semi-annual basis?
Well, there's some qualifying things, not a simple answer.
Okay.
Jessie and her mother, my wife, Alice, are crazy about The Birdcage.
Ooh, I love that movie.
It's a brilliant
Crazy
film.
beyond description about The Birdcage. They quote from it all the time. And anytime it happens to be on channel surfing, they're there. They're going to stop and watch.
Guess who's not coming?
Not a big fan.
No, I don't dislike the movie. And I love Robin Williams. I love Nathan Lane, Hank Azaria. It's Mike Nichols. With
Blah, blah, blah. You won't watch it when we watch it.
No, I don't.
You're the worst.
I don't.
That's all right.
That's all right. I tend not to.
Are there any that all three of you do enjoy the same?
7 Brides for 7 Brothers.
Oh, that's great.
Wow.
That's a great one.
The honest answer is we don't have family movies, really, because we don't watch movies together that are not for work a lot.
Sure.
We don't really have a lot of time.
That makes sense.
And so, but it's funny, I've had people say that to me, what did you all watch together? And I'm just like, like we go to screenings together all the time.
Okay.
It's usually trading off. It's either that neither my mom or I want to see it, so we like draw straws, or we all want to see it, and then my dad has to. My mom always complains about being a +1, but I remind her that I'm a +2. And now my poor husband's a +4, so it's a. But
Jessie and I have an interesting history in one area, which is from the time she was an adolescent, we've had the misfortune of seeing inappropriate movies together. Where I mean, both of us feel really awkward.
I'm thinking about this, and I don't know. Why did you ever even start doing this?
There's stuff like Titanic. which is your more sort of basic situation of my mom and my dad on either side of me and I'm seeing a sex scene, not ideal. Then you get a little bit more complicated with South Park, Bigger, Longer, Uncut.
Oh, yeah,
where,
that's
where
complicated.
Satan is pulling out, hot dogs. Satan and Saddam Hussein are pulling out
Yes.
hot dogs. You go to there, and then someone thinks it's a good idea for us to watch Pedro Almodovar movies as a family.
Oh,
And
all right.
I'm not saying you've made terrible life choices, but maybe not the best thing for us to watch as a group.
Right.
12 years old, watching Talk to Her, sitting between my parents, trying to figure out how I can become one with the seat and just disappear.
Talk to Her is not a comfortable family movie.
No.
That is for certain.
No.
But no, we across the board, if there is a movie with nudity in it, sex, you name it, we will end up seeing it together. And we've gotten really good.
I was going to say, don't you build up some kind of like desensitization to that eventually?
Yes, and we're pretty. When it's happening, we're really good at this, at like the just dead on, like
Each of us adopts tunnel vision.
yeah, we don't exist.
It's like
to
being
each
at a
other.
urinal, like in a road.
Okay.
We just don't. No, there's nothing else. Horse blinders. And then we're really good at when people, because everyone likes to bring it up afterwards. They'll be like, "Oh, that's got to be awkward," and we're like, "No, why would that be weird that we just watched a threesome together?" That's totally normal. Bruno, the movie Bruno.
Oh, wow.
When the penis is close up and says Bruno on it, my dad leaned over and he goes, "Every fucking time." So we've had it happen a lot. We're just used
cursed.
to it, man.
Yes.
We're cursed.
Oh, yeah.
There are worse curses in life, but
No, sure.
This is
I
pretty
imagine-
bad, though. I'll be honest.
I-
Pretty bad.
I wouldn't want to watch most movies with my mom
Oh, yeah.
No.
or
Yeah,
any
yeah,
children
yeah.
I might one day have. My brother is one thing. But I've sat through some uncomfortable things with my father. My father-in-law and I were big movie buddies, and so like we went and saw The American. That movie doesn't even look like anything that should have nudity.
Right.
But not only is there a sex scene, it's like 5 straight minutes long of pure grunting. And at some point, I'm just like, I am married to this guy's daughter. How can either of us be normal from here on out?
I don't remember if I told you this when you had me on your podcast, but a life highlight for me was watching Forgetting Sarah Marshall, sitting between my parents.
Oh, no.
And when Jason Segel comes onto, and he's naked, and you see his penis, and my mom leans over and goes, "Look, Jesse, he's Jewish." And that's one of those, like, see, you guys are missing the final part of the trifecta of Maltin, my mother. And everyone who meets my mother loves my mother. She's hysterical. But she's definitely that guy who would say exactly that and scar me for the rest of my life.
Sounds like she needs to be on a podcast.
Honestly, she's been on ours.
Has she?
Yeah, and she's pissed
I've
we haven't
heard
asked
that
her
one.
back. So
Oh, well.
we'll bring her on
You
again.
could fix that.
We'll bring her on again.
Bring it on.
Yeah.
You guys want to stay a family, right?
I mean,
oh yeah.
So I was watching the YouTube video of your interview with George Lucas. I guess when the special edition of Star Wars, the original trilogy, came out in '95.
Oh, by the way, that was the first movie I ever built in the theater in projection. Was
Oh yeah.
Star Wars, the reissue in 90,
A New Hope or
97, 98, whatever year it was.
97.
97. That was the first movie I ever built.
Because they did it. Did they do it all within the same year? All three
Yeah, it
of
was
them?
January, February, March.
Yeah.
And by the way, one of Jesse's classmates was the daughter of Bill Mechanic, who was then running 20th Century Fox. And so Bill and I would sit next to each other at their soccer games and basketball games and such. And Bill was and remains a very candid guy.
yes.
He's if you're a reporter covering the industry, film industry, you go to call him because you're going to get a quote on any topic you bring up, and he will be absolutely fearlessly honest. And Fox, in spite of all that had happened from the original trilogy, when they reissued them, they still didn't think they were going to do that hot.
Really?
Yes. They were actually taken aback. They couldn't believe the numbers they got the first weekend. They questioned, maybe we could still stagger the release a little more, drain a few more dollars out of this. They just didn't get it.
They were huge, weren't they?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
In a January, February, March release,
Well,
right?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think New Hope did better than all the other ones, but they weren't like, oh, they made $100 million again or anything like that. But they were, I think, 50, somewhere around there, 50 million, somewhere around there.
For a reissue.
For a reissue, yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Was it that relationship that kind of set up that interview? Because
No.
that's a long form
there
interview
was
too.
a different time frame.
Oh, okay. What did you get out of that? Because watching that now, and I guess we've kind of gotten used to Lucas as this, mythical figure.
Yeah.
Very aloof in that interview. Very kind of monotone. Is that what you got from it too?
I was just interested in what he had to say.
I'm asking you about an interview 20 years old.
No, but it's an important one. It's the one that I get asked about all
Oh, really?
the time.
The most.
Not asked about. It's brought up to me.
Oh.
I can almost tell when it's coming. It's usually somebody 20-ish, 25-ish. If they come up to me and they say, the first time I ever saw you, and I'll say no, knowing what the answer is. I used to watch you interview George Lucas on those original cassettes of Star Wars. They sold 25 million cassettes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Really? I had them.
A lot of people do.
Yeah.
It's the only VHS they've kept
Oh, really?
in many cases.
Because they've never, I had a nerd friend explain this to me. They've never reissued the films.
It's the only time that they,
uncut. Like, I guess
It's
those
the first
are the
and last
only
time.
pure
Those are the
versions.
exact versions that played in theaters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's why
Because
people
it had
hold on
that
to
silver
it.
box set. There was a
Yeah.
silver and a gold, the widescreen and the.
But you're forgetting the other version of what people say, which is, I used to have to fast forward through you all the time to watch Star Wars.
Was it at the beginning?
That's,
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, really?
So but that's my favorite. I love it because it's so honest. It's just like, oh my God. People come up to me, oh my God, I love your dad. I had to fast forward through and watch Star Wars. I'm like, thanks.
No, I was very pleased with. I thought he was very responsive.
No, he went on.
And articulate. I talked to him for over an hour and a half.
Oh, really?
And they cut them into 7-minute segments.
Oh, wow.
And at the time, he was not that readily available for interviews. It was more of an event,
Right.
having an interview with him anywhere in any medium. And I said to the people at Fox Video, put out a cassette of the whole conversation. Nothing he said was dull. It was all interesting. And I'm not a Star Wars fanatic,
Right.
but I found everything he said interesting, and they wouldn't do it.
It is very interesting to watch that now where he's teasing the upcoming. He's like,
Yeah.
maybe by 98, 99, we'll be getting another Star Wars story. You asked him if he was interested in directing anymore. Of course, he ended up directing the prequels and everything. Yeah, it's just so fascinating seeing that from this lens because I saw one that was all condensed together, those 7-minute segments. And, you switch positions and things like that. But the way that he kind of explained this was, as he said, very interesting, but it also seemed just kind of, like he was, pardon the pun, on a different planet,
Well, George is not a cuddly, warm, fuzzy type of guy. He's very bright, needless to say, and he loves talking about his work. You don't have to push too hard. Get him to talk about his work.
But we have seen him be cuddly. We've seen the two.
Oh, yeah.
There are two people in the world who can make him that way. Is kids.
Ah.
Katie is, I think, my age or around my age.
Well, I teach at USC, George's alma mater, rather. And this is the alma mater for whom he wrote a check, now maybe 10 years ago, for $175 million.
Wow.
They went back and
rebuild-
asked for more, by the way.
Of course they did.
That didn't cover the
They
expense.
got more.
But he completely
All I
rebuilt.
want is $1 million, George. That's all
he-
I need.
He rebuilt the campus,
Really?
for the School of Cinema, and
Not the whole campus,
Right.
the cinema.
the
Should be the whole campus.
Honestly.
And
Yeah.
and when asked why, the New York Times asked him why he did, and he said because cinema still isn't taken seriously as an academic, field by most universities, and the one thing universities respect is money,
Yes, that is very true.
and that's why he wanted to, put on a good show build an impressive place, which he has done. And, you know, it shows incredible loyalty.
Yeah.
And it shows incredible foresight to want to pass something along to the next generation of filmmakers.
And he comes down, a lot to the school for fundraiser stuff, and they'll do events. He comes down, so he puts his money where his mouth is. Like, so, he is there for the school. So
one night, we have a break before I show new movies and have some of the filmmakers there afterwards for Q&A.
Oh, okay.
And we have an opening section of the class. It's a long night. And then there's a break. And one night during the break, a nice young girl comes over to me to introduce herself. And because I have like 350 students, I don't get a lot of one-on-one time. She says, hi, my name's Katie. I said, hi, Katie. Nice to meet you. She said, I think you know my father. I said, really, what does he do? She said, he's a filmmaker. I said, what's his name? She said, George Lucas. So that's his daughter, Katie.
And she's lovely, and she's very bright, and yeah, all the good things. But the first time that we ever saw George really smile, because in photos he just doesn't normally smile.
Yes, yeah.
The first time, I don't remember what event it was at USC that he was there for. It was a night Alex was part of putting all that stuff together. I don't remember what it was.
It was in the gallery there.
It was. I'm trying to think if it was like the TV stuff. USC does a lot of really, really cool exhibitions, and he was there for one of them. And I saw him look at Katie, and he smiled. He really smiled. And I just totally had that moment of, he looked at her like a dad looks at his kid. And it was like, oh, my heart. And I suddenly, like, everything made sense a bit.
That's fascinating.
Okay, so there is a different thing we don't get to see.
And then we met him with his wife.
At Sundance.
And
he got to interview on stage George Lucas and Robert Redford.
Oh, wow.
You know, like you do.
Yeah. But the best part was backstage beforehand.
Backstage was the highlight of life.
Where they were very loose and very relaxed. And we met his wife, Melody, who was a pretty remarkable
hilarious
woman. She's a financial whiz.
Yeah. Whip smart.
Yeah.
Like, you get it. And she showed us. So first of all, just watching her, in the same way people they think it's funny the way that my dad and I are, because obviously you look at my dad with reverence, and a lot of people do, understandably so. It's still my dad, so I will put bunny ears on him. I can do all the things that I think other people might want to do, and I can just do whatever I want.
Right.
And it was a similar kind of vibe watching them, which is that's his wife. So she's not going to take any of his BS. Like, there's not, so she's just calling him out on stuff, and they're making fun of each other. And that was wild. Then she showed me, at that time, their child was probably like a year, little guy.
An infant.
And she showed me this photo of the two of them in bed with the same crazy bed head, like matching.
And George was sleeping.
And no, they'd just woken up.
Oh, is that what it is?
Because what I remember about it is that they look the same, and it's so cute. And it was another one of those, like, this is not real. Like, I'm seeing this photo of, like, George in PJs with his infant child. But that was really special to see him kind of.
That's a side that you just don't see from.
He's always been very nice to me.
Oh yeah, always very, very nice. I've never seen him be rude to honestly, I've never seen him be rude to anyone. He's just very firm. So if he doesn't want to do an interview, he's not doing it. If he doesn't want to do something, but frankly, I get it.
He's got a big empire.
That's the thing.
Again, pardon the pun.
Too easy.
Yeah, I know.
But
I mean, he's had to deal with both sides of it. I can't even imagine, honestly, because I deal with 0.001% of it in terms of like social media.
Of course.
Love and hate. He's the man that created Star Wars, and we love him. And then he's the man that directed the prequels, and at least a certain fan base has decided to hate him for that, or he ruined such and such, or same guy. You really think he wanted to have those 3 movies not be good?
Yeah.
You really think he wanted them to disappoint you? I mean, so he's taken it all from all directions his whole life, and I can't even imagine what that must be like. So to be even smiling once for any reason is like a good thing, I think.
How do you smile?
Right, but that's it. He's very, it's kind of like that thing of someone gets called a diva. And some people are, and some people are jerks, but some people are just very firm.
Yep.
And they tell you what they want and how they want it. And to me, there is a difference. And if you're polite about that, then you do you.
Well, yeah, and there's a certain kind of person like a George Lucas who has more than earned the right to be particular about what he is and isn't going to do.
He cannot walk down the street. That was part of it, was that like they have to ghost him in and out of everywhere.
Right.
And you get it. And some people are screaming, you know, is he going to come out and do sign autographs and take pictures? It's like, no, because then he'd never go home.
I've often said stuff like, I feel bad for Taylor Swift. She can't just go out for a Starbucks without becoming like front page news on TMZ.
Sure.
Yeah.
So anyway, I've derailed us.
What is this class, and what do you show there?
I inherited a class. I inherited a class that George Lucas took
Oh, really?
when he was a student.
Wow.
Ron Howard took this class. A lot of interesting people took this class. It was started about 1960 by a then very prominent film critic named Arthur Knight, who wrote the first one-volume history of film called The Liveliest Art, which came out in a paperback, and it was, everybody had this book. I think I was in high school. It was the only book of its kind. Just a really good, solid, concise, but comprehensive history of film. Arthur went to USC and said, you know, you're here in the middle of Hollywood. Why aren't we inviting movie makers to bring their current films down to campus? And so that's what they started doing. When he started doing that, Alfred Hitchcock was still making movies. But so was John Cassavetes. And he had them and everybody in between.
Wow.
And so it was very popular. And it had a terrible name, Theatrical Film Symposium. It still has that name. We've never come up with a better one.
No one uses it.
In the old days, people called it Thursday Night at the Movies. And then for years, people just call it and still call it by its course number, which is 466. And if you meet anybody from USC who's been in the film department or even just around, and you say, did you take 466? Oh, yeah. So he taught it, Arthur taught it for many years. Then he retired. It was taken over by Charles Champlin, who was for many years the lead critic of the LA Times and kind of a cultural ambassador around town. Very classy guy, very genteel. And he did it for quite a long time, and more interesting people took it. And then he retired, and they hired somebody to take his place who it turned out was having personal issues involving alcohol. And that was a disastrous semester. It was the fall. So over the holiday break, the associate dean of the school at the time, Rick Jewell, a wonderful guy, took me to lunch and wooed me to see if I would come in January for the new semester and take over this class. And I said, well, I'm flattered. I know it's a famous class. I said, I just don't know if I have the time. He said, you don't have to grade papers. You don't have to book the films or the guests. We have somebody on staff who'll do that. You don't have to attend faculty meetings. I said, really?
Go on.
He essentially put it pretty plainly. He said, we just need you there Thursday night. That's what we need. I said, well, I'll give it a try. And 20 years later, I'm still doing it.
Wow.
Awesome.
In the interim, I do get involved in the booking of the films and the guests with a wonderful guy who's on staff who does all the heavy lifting in that area. But every now and then, I have a connection that I can use to help seal the deal, or I've seen a film he hasn't yet, and I said, I'd love to show that. So we collaborate. And so it's teaching at its best. And though I regret not having more of a relationship with my students because it's such a large auditorium.
Sure, I'm sure that's a very popular course.
It is a very popular course.
I was going to say, what degree do they give to the person who just takes that course over and over and over and over again? Because that would be me.
I've had some students who've taken it 3 times.
Yeah.
Really?
Wow,
That's what's crazy is because it's semester by semester, he's got like 700 kids a year.
Yeah.
And 20 years.
Yeah.
So everywhere we go, Professor Maltin, Professor Maltin, Professor Maltin.
That's awesome.
It's wild. Anywhere we are, someone comes over and says, Professor Maltin, I took your class in 1998. I took your, whatever it is. Professor Maltin, Professor Maltin.
I had an idea first semester because I showed Alfonso Cuarón's remake of Great Expectations.
I love that movie.
Barrett loves that movie to death.
And
Terrifying. That film is terrifying.
Terrifying.
And I said to my class, which was jam-packed that semester, I said, all right, just out of curiosity, how many of you have seen the classic 40s version of Great Expectations by David Lean?
Yeah.
5 hands went up out of 350.
Wow.
5. I said, oh boy, what am I going to do? So I decided what I would do is on the last night of class, I would have an old film and a guest from the old film. And I knew exactly who I wanted right away. This is spring 1998. And I had already been friendly with Gloria Stewart before she was cast in Titanic, as the old Rose. And because I was a fan of her from her 1930s movies. She's in The Invisible Man with Claude Rains. She worked for James Whale twice in that, and then in The Old Dark House with Boris Karloff. She worked twice for John Ford in the 30s. Had a very interesting career. Really intelligent, well-spoken woman. And she said, sure. So I called Universal and I said, do you have a good 35 millimeter print of John Ford's Airmail, which was her 4th movie, 1932? They said, we just restored it. How did you know? Wow. I said, I didn't know. I was hoping. And so if I was going to show them an old movie, it had to look good.
Yeah, yeah.
Dispel any ideas that old black and white movies look, kind of crummy. Perfect print. She came. We showed the film. First, I set up the film and introduced it, tried to put it in context. This is not a great film, not a classic film. It's a well-made film, good storytelling. And they liked the film. And then there's Gloria. This is 1998. We've just seen her in a 1932 movie. So I interview her first for a little while, then I open it up to questions. Well, they didn't even know what to ask. Finally, one girl said, so what did you think of your performance? She said, oh, I thought it was terrible. She said, I was training for the stage. I was not prepared to work in film at all. I didn't know how to work to the camera. Let's face it, she said, they just hired me because I was pretty. Wow. Where are you going to hear that?
Yeah.
From somebody,
What movie did you watch with her? It was just the two of you. Do you remember?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's such an obscure movie.
No. But it's because I'm remembering the comment was, there's old fat ass. I remember that you got to watch a movie.
Yes.
She's very self-effacing, obviously.
Yeah.
And that was her reaction to seeing herself on screen. There's old fat ass.
It was a musical called I Like It That Way.
Oh, okay.
Obviously.
And, she was terrific. Terrific. She was at your bat mitzvah.
I know.
Yes.
Oh.
And I really enjoyed our friendship. That was very special. So they had an experience, my students.
Yeah.
The next semester, I showed Ernst Lubitsch's To Be or Not to Be, one of my favorite movies, with Jack Benny and Carol Lombard. And the leading man is a young Robert Stack.
Oh, really?
And, of course, everybody knew him from TV, from doing that crime show he
Right,
did.
yeah, Unsolved Mysteries.
Commercials that he did. Yeah. And he was a delightful man. He was very lighthearted and funny, the opposite of everybody he played on screen. He's always a stern, sober-faced guy, until they put him in Airplane.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And anyway, he was delightful, wonderful. So I kept doing that for a while. Then I kind of ran out of interesting films and people who were available and alive.
You're forgetting.
But I had 2 unforgettable nights. One was with Sidney Poitier.
Yeah.
Wow.
Who didn't want to show any of the racially provocative movies. I wanted to show the one with Tony Curtis, the Defiant Ones. No, he wanted to show something more benign. So we showed at his request To Sir With Love,
Oh, wow.
which is a very entertaining movie. Everyone enjoyed it, and then there he was. There's the man. And what's funny is he doesn't really like to talk about his movies. He's not an anecdotal guy about those movies. But what he does like to talk about is his journey. And that's what he started to do, and you could hear a pin drop.
Wow.
He had that class in the palm of his hand. It was, and then afterwards, stayed, shook hands with every student who wanted to meet him, gave his undivided attention, a class act.
A lot of guests do that. A lot of the guests will stay, and the kids will line up and ask questions, and they're I mean, for the most part, they're really generous with their time. And
Yeah.
they're not allowed to ask for autographs or photos. Because
we got to take this class.
that's not.
Seriously, I need to
You know.
audit this
It's
thing.
not appropriate to a classroom.
Yeah.
Right.
Even though
I
it's
know.
not a
yeah, yeah.
classroom.
Though one night when we had you had Orlando Bloom and Mark Ruffalo, they started saying, "Did you want a photo? Did you want a photo?" And suddenly, like for miles.
And
just-
the last person I had in that sort of theme of old movie and older performer was Angela Lansbury,
Oh my God.
who had been willing to do it for years, but things kept getting in the way. Finally, I got her, and I showed Frank Capra's State of the Union, which is a film with Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn.
Wow.
And the third lead is an impossibly young Angela Lansbury, who always played older than she was.
Right.
Yep.
She was like 23 when she made this
Really?
movie. Yeah. Well, she got her first Oscar nomination for Gaslight when I think she was 20 or 21, something like
wow.
that. I may be off. Don't hold me to these facts.
We'll fact check.
I need a fact check on this. But she came, and she too, just incredibly candid and forthcoming. She talks without hesitation about her son's problem with drugs and how she decided to deal with it, which was to move her family to Ireland. She felt that L.A., even the tonier part of L.A., was just not healthy. And he'd fallen into this drug, problem. So her kids went kicking and screaming to Ireland, where they bought a castle. She and her husband bought a castle. And they did straighten out their lives. And her son ended up directing some episodes of Murder, She Wrote.
Oh, really?
Yep. And so she talked about all this.
Wow.
This is a famous person,
Yeah.
telling pretty candid stuff. So again, I interviewed her. I asked the kids at the beginning of the class. I call them the kids, my students. They're most of them 20-somethings, and I said, "All right, how many people know?" I said, "This is not a test. How many people know who Angela Lansbury is?" Every hand went up. I said, "This is from Murder, She Wrote, probably, right?" They said, "Yeah." Yeah. BAFTA, the British Academy of Film and Television, had done a tribute to her and put together a terrific 5-minute sort of career reel with baby pictures and tracing her life. And at one point, they had from a TV special her standing in front of an orchestra singing Beauty and the Beast. And in the middle of it, it transitions to the animated film where she's Mrs. Potts. And you heard from my class, like a wave, and it's like, oh, they didn't realize that's the same. Okay, good. So when I opened the evening to Q&A, and again, they didn't quite know what to ask, and one girl sitting like in the last row of this big auditorium says, "Could you sing Beauty and the Beast?"
Wow.
Now I'm about to say, "Oh, that's not fair." It's late at night, and, and she's 81, and you just can't do that. Something in me shut up. Something in me said, "Just shut up." And Miss Lansbury said, "Oh, I couldn't." "Well, all right." And she sang the first couple of lines
Oh, my
a
God.
cappella, and the place went wild.
Yeah.
They went crazy. And then afterwards, she, like Mr. Poitier, stayed and shook every hand and gave several minutes of undivided attention. She asked each one, what is your major? What do you hope to do?
I cried.
You know.
I just cried. I was like, I love you so much.
What can you say?
Man,
That's amazing.
Those are amazing moments.
Oh, wow.
Amazing
To show how
moments.
meaningful movies are in general, that a whole classroom can just go wild based on just a few notes of a song and everything. And that's why I feel like stuff like your podcast, and anytime I hear any kind of podcast, intimately getting into an actor's head or a director's head or anything, that's what we're all here for. That's what we want to hear. We want to hear all these great stories. We want to, have them sort of, reminisce on movies that we've watched a million times and everything. And that's why I enjoy listening to the podcast, and that's why that class is so popular, is because they have a chance for something like that happening. I mean, you brought up 2 moments. I'm sure there's students who could bring up 10, 15 moments that they would consider that way.
Absolutely. You know, I just showed A Quiet Place a few weeks ago. I had the composer, I had the sound designer, and the 2 sound mixers, as well as 2 of the producers.
First of all, that's a lot of guests. Normally it's 1 or 2, sometimes 3. This is 6. It's a lot.
It doesn't sound glamorous, but for that film, for A Quiet Place, which 2 of you haven't seen, sound is crucial to the success of that film. The way they integrate the score with natural ambient sound, the way they decide when to emphasize sound, when to de-emphasize sound. There are moments of silence in the film, and they all matter.
Yeah,
they all really matter to the success of that film. So they were wonderful guests, very articulate and very forthcoming, and it was a terrific night.
Yeah. I imagine so. I mean, those guys become sort of stars on their own at that point because
yes, they do. And of course, the class, you know, they don't know what to expect sometimes. Neither do I in some cases. But I learned very early that sometimes the behind-the-scenes people, not the ones you expect, not the writer, not the director, not the producer, not the screenwriter or the cinematographer. Those are the obvious sort of, you know, core people. But some of the other people have the best stories and the most interesting experiences. I had a prop master one night, one of the best known prop masters in the business, when we showed Memoirs of a Geisha. And she talked about her whole, I mean, I didn't know any of this stuff. She said, every day, I said, what are you responsible for? She said, everything that isn't a costume or a set. So, for instance, they're fans, the laced, intricate fans that the girls use, that the women use. Those are all bar-coded. They check them in, they check them out, and she has to implore the cast, please, I'm responsible for these. Treat them carefully, because they're all inventoried, and I'm responsible if anything gets lost or broken or somebody walks away with it. She had so many interesting stories.
Yeah.
And not the likeliest subject on the surface of it, but there she was.
A lot of the sound people you've had in general, like a lot of the different sound folks, they've been fascinating. Just explaining how they get a sound and how much work they'll do to get the sound.
Yeah, that's we'll go the extra mile.
That's fascinating.
And that's the other part of the class's history. Ben Burt.
Oh, wow.
Ben Burt not only took this class and projected for this class from the booth, but used the sound of the motor for one of the 35mm projectors as one of the components of the lightsaber.
Oh! The sound of a lightsaber. So there are people who will come and they're just like, where is it? Where's the projector? Show us the projector. And they get so excited to see it. Oh my God. So, and we've got a projector. We've got the whole, and there's the projectionists. They really care.
Yeah.
We've had lots of really, really lovely people who work with my dad at class.
Here's a question you may get a lot. I'm not sure, but I feel like it's important to talk about this. But what do you think the purpose of movie criticism is?
Well, there isn't too much of it anymore,
right?
In its purest form, as I think of it. I tend to be a purist, which makes me something of an old fogey, which I try not to be. I try very hard not to be. But I think film criticism, or any criticism, is establishing a standard and trying to see how an individual film measures up to those standards. And part of it is taking every film on its own terms. If I go to see Friday the 13th, Part 17, I shouldn't be expecting King Lear, and vice versa. How well does this film achieve its goal? What is this film trying to do? What is it trying to be? And then I think, so I only read criticism after I've seen the movie, not before.
Right.
Most people use it as a consumer guide. And there's nothing wrong about that. Siskel and Ebert's thumbs up, thumbs down, was a shorthand. It was a shorthand for telling whether they liked a movie or not. Same way the Rotten Tomatoes score is a shorthand. But if you really care about movies, you should read people who write good essays.
Yes.
People who, and here's my point, people who will illuminate things about the movie that you may not have thought of yourself.
Yeah.
And those are my favorite critics, are people who do that for me. I just saw the movie. I know what I thought of it, but what did I miss? What did I not fully comprehend or understand? So that's what I look for. And I think that's sort of the utopian form of criticism.
Yeah, we obviously get the fast food version of everything when somebody's seen a movie and then they have to write it within whatever their deadline is and everything. And I never felt like that was the true opinion of a movie. It's basically just what you have to scramble to write down a lot of times.
Yeah.
Whereas the true film criticism that I see nowadays that's just really interesting to read is somebody who's watched the movie like 15 times and they have really studied it and they are going deep and philosophical about it and everything. And those are the ones that are most interesting to read. And of course, critics who can turn it around within an hour or two, those are amazing too. But yeah, I think that's exactly what you're saying. There is just that when you can illuminate something about a movie that nobody has been able to, they just watched at face value and didn't think of any sort of deeper meaning to it.
Well, my friend Todd McCarthy, who was with Variety for like 40 years and now has been at the Hollywood Reporter for a little time now, I think he's the best film critic in the country. He doesn't get recognition because he writes for the trade press. So he's not intended to be read by consumers. But now, thanks to the internet, you can read his reviews online. And I think he's just brilliant. And one of the things that impresses me, like right now, whether it be at the Cannes Film Festival or just a normal time of year where there isn't something like that, putting him under the gun, he absorbs so much in one viewing and writes on deadline.
Yeah.
And these are thoughtful, perceptive reviews, and you can't believe that he turned them around as quickly as he did.
It's just an innate gift, I guess, right?
To
be able to process.
He's had a lot of practice, a lot of experience.
It's like Justin's similar.
Justin Chang, brilliant writer.
Beautiful writer.
For the LA Times.
Beautiful, some of the most beautiful writing you've ever seen.
And he took my class, but we're not going to take I absolutely take no credit. He did take, however, a class in the Annenberg School of Journalism at USC, taught by the lead critic for the LA Times, Kenneth Turan, who I also enjoy reading. A very graceful writer who knows his movies and loves movies. And so there's a lot of talented people out there.
But what you're saying and what you're asking goes to what you always say about your class, which is he's trying to create smarter moviegoers.
Yeah.
That because the students are not all film students.
They come from all over the campus.
And
I have water polo players.
Yeah, we get everything. Depending on
that's like 30% of the class is water polo.
Depending on part of the year, you'll have the whole back will just be football players. Like it's pretty wild. But that's what he always says is I want to make better, smarter moviegoers. And I think that is what you try when you're writing. It's a lot of that.
Well,
and
that is a common thing that we hear from a lot of people, right? Is that well, I didn't go in there expecting an Oscar winner, so I took my brain out and blah, 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 blah. I've always found this to be a lazy way of watching movies, and I don't tolerate it. and whenever somebody says that about a movie, I just pulled my brain out for whatever. I was like, well, then we're hopeless then as a culture.
Well, I'll politely disagree.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything wrong with checking your brains at the door.
Okay.
For a silly movie, for just a lightweight movie. But there are good examples of that, and there are bad examples of that.
Yeah, and I think I'm more along the lines of that. I understand that there are movies out there that you're not meant to criticize.
It's the difference between Airplane and Date Movie or something like that.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Yeah.
Airplane's one of my favorite.
Yeah.
I love that
one of
movie.
ours too.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Yeah.
you said escapism.
Yeah.
You know, that's something that of the things I'm proudest of is it's exactly what my dad is talking about, that he does meeting a movie at its own level. And so that does mean, in a sense, in some cases, you walk in and you say, "I'm not expecting an Oscar winner."
Yeah.
And I totally understand what you mean. But sometimes it's like, did you have fun? Did you laugh? Did you enjoy it? Yes. Then it succeeded. They even used to make it so when I was younger, the film critics had to bring their kid to see some of the kid movies.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and there are film festivals actually that will still do this, interestingly enough, where if you're on a jury, depending on what you're doing, like there has to be a kid. And I think that had an interesting effect that I didn't know about, of course, at the time.
I watched a lot of movies through Jessie's eyes when she was growing up, and that was very educational for me.
Yes.
You know,
I'll often ask Barrett, because he'll say, "Oh, you know, Captain Underpants was pretty good." My first question is, "Did you take a kid?"
Yeah,
because he's got a 10-year-old, and I know that can impact if the 10-year-old really enjoys it.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
definitely.
You said it's like you start to look for different things. So as opposed to, is the movie good? It's, does it have a good message?
Yeah. Does it send a good message? Are there role models in it for a young girl watching this film?
Yeah.
Those are the kind of things I was concerned about.
And with our guests, some of the funniest, that's one of my favorite things to ask our guests is, what do you show your kids and what do they think? So someone like Ike Barinholtz was saying, I've seen the Tinkerbell movies 17,000 times. But it teaches friendship. So it's a funny thing to ask.
You find little things.
That's it. And we've had a couple of people who have brought up the stuff, whether it's, obviously right now, whether it's Frozen or Moana, and it's over and over again. They'll say, but what I found was this, because I saw it 17 million times.
Yeah.
But at least it's,
And I love old movies, and we love, for instance, Singing in the Rain.
Yeah.
Not a rarity. Many people love Singing in the Rain for very good reason. But really, that's escapism.
Yeah.
You know, that there's no hidden agenda there. It's escapism. But when it's that good, when it's that solid, that well written, that well executed in every way, then it leaves you walk out of the theater seeing that, or if you're lucky enough to see it in the theater, you're walking on a cloud. It actually lifts your spirits. What higher praise can you give it to any piece of art than to do that? If it was that easy, they'd be doing it more often. It's not that easy.
I think what I want to direct that at, you know, like obviously there are movies that you go to just take your brain out, but the ones that I hear this on most are like Transformers. So like, you know, in Transformers, it's for me like the thing that I would always hear is that, well, it's just robots fighting and blah, blah, blah. That's fine. I'm like, why does it have to be 2 hours and 45 minutes long? If it's just that, then can it be an hour and a half? I think I'd have more fun with it.
Well,
that
and
way.
the thing for me is, and I guess this is where we lose some people who aren't fans of CinemaSins, is that sometimes our real opinions make their way into a video as a sin right alongside something we clearly don't believe. I just want a movie to make sense by its own rules.
Sure.
I can handle a talking toy movie, even though I know in reality toys can't talk. But don't you break any of these rules that you set for yourself.
Wait a minute
and
now.
pull me out of it.
In Baby Driver,
Okay.
and we love Edgar Wright, so you know, but in Baby Driver, am I wrong? At the beginning, Kevin Spacey sets up that he never works with the same crew twice.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Except later in the movie.
Yes.
When he does work with the same crew.
Where he picks the most volatile possible people. We purposely, we love Edgar. We love him, and he is, he's incredible.
And I'm a fan of his work, too.
Yeah.
This was a movie where everyone around us, it felt like Emperor's New Clothes, where everyone is like, isn't this the best thing you've ever seen in your life? And we're like, not really.
That whole ending is ridiculous,
there
too.
were so many things. That's a major pet peeve for me. don't tell me something and then not only not follow it, but not follow it that much.
Because I'm not going to check out my whole brain ever. Right. But I can turn parts of it off if you tell me rules from the real world don't apply in this movie.
If you tell me people can fly, I'll go with it.
Exactly.
That's what I say it every single time. I will go with you. I will go with you whatever you tell me.
And yet I find it strange that the contemporary movie-going audience doesn't seem to cotton to metaphor.
No.
They'll take any kind of fantasy, the most outrageous, futuristic, idea or concept, but they're not easily warmed up to allegories.
No, yeah, you're right.
And I don't understand that. It would seem like they would go hand in hand.
Someone doesn't like the movie Inception, and it gets him yelled at a lot.
Well, we won't yell at him.
But one of the things you said to me as soon as you came home.
Oh yeah. They got to make what is it called? The break? What was it?
Oh, the kick. The
kick. Oh, God, the kick's coming at 12 noon. If we don't make the kick, it's all lost. We're screwed. It's all over. Got to make the kick at 12 noon. Oh, we missed the kick? Oh, all right. Well, there's another kick coming up.
He was so mad. The hands down highlight, I have told my friends, because when my friends are home, if my dad comes home from a movie, they get to hear the real review, which we've often talked about how someone has to find a way to get those from him and post them separately as Leonard's actual review that's not the one that's polite. And so what I told people for a long time with Inception, it's still my favorite. I was upstairs in my room. My parents came home, and this is our old house. So I could always hear when the garage door shut, and it meant they were home. And I'd yell down, "What did you think?" And my dad yells back up, "What a pretentious piece of fucking bullshit!" And he just screams it up the stairs. And
maybe not those exact words.
Oh, friend. It was those exact words, because I'll never forget it till the day I die. I know we don't like to let people know you curse. I know that we don't ever tell anybody that you curse, like a sailor. But it was one of the funniest things that's ever happened. And I came downstairs and I said to him, I was like, please just have that be the review. Please have that be the review. He said, no, I have to write words. I was like, I don't think you do. I really feel like if we just put that out there, everyone would be okay with it.
I read on Wikipedia, and tell me if this is wrong, but you have the shortest review of a movie ever?
Guinness Book.
Apparently I do, in my movie guide. And it was a reader who submitted this to the Guinness people.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Wow. Came as a total surprise to me. But I hold a record that I'm not sure will ever be broken.
No. It can't.
It can't.
It can't.
The movie's a 1948, mediocre 1948 movie musical called Isn't It Romantic? ? And my review is no.
That's beautiful.
The thing is, mind you, because you know how the book breaks it down. So it's got the stars, and then it does director, then it has some of the cast listed. So the best part about it to me is that it's not just like it would be on the internet where it says, "Isn't it romantic?" No, it's "Isn't it romantic?" 1948. Blah, blah, blah. So you got this whole thing of like detail to explain it to you, and then you get to the part where the review normally would start, and it just says no, and then it's like video available on the such and such. And I was like, this is amazing.
It's fantastic. It's something I feel like I'm sort of a kindred spirit with you when I see a review that just simply says no afterwards. I feel like that's a CinemaSins predecessor almost. Yeah. We had a reviewer here who used to review for the Nashville scene named Jim Ridley, who when Stephen King's Thinner came out, his capsule review just said, "He is." And it was that's it.
Sometimes you can express fully what you intend to say.
Brevity can work.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing. You can't do it all the time.
Yeah,
because you really like to.
No.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I used to. So my part of the book, what I worked on and what I was assigned were either the teenage movies because I was the only person writing for the book that wasn't 40 and up. So I got assigned all the teenage stuff, and then my dad dubbed me the Rob Schneider specialist.
Nice.
I watched all the Adam Sandler, all that kind of stuff. And I would say to him, the hardest part of reviewing this is not what you think, which is, oh, they're all terrible. It's that a lot of them, what I wanted the review to be for most of these films, even when I would review stuff like Sorority Row or any of that, is if you're here, you already know what this movie is. You don't need to be reading a review, you know. And every single time I wanted to say, you don't need me to tell you what this is, because if you're going to see Sorority Row and you want me to tell you that it's Hitchcock, no. And every time I had the hardest time writing up the little bitty summaries, writing it all up together, because every single time it was like, Rob Schneider is a stapler. Like that's what I wanted to write.
I was about to say, you must really love the South Park that takes off on
so
these.
Good. Rob Schneider is a carrot. No, I like every single time I would come down, I really struggled writing the reviews. I said to him, it'd be easier if I hated or loved these. It's that I have no emotion for the most
where
part.
I am.
It's that a lot of them were sort of like, there are movies like The Wedding Singer is a great movie. It is. The Water Boy. It holds up, and it's still one of my favorite things. I even love, Billy Madison and Happy Gilmore, in part just because of the age I was when they come out, and I love them. But when you start getting into stuff like Grown Ups or Blended or whatever, where he really kind of goes, he half wants to be a family man, and so he's trying to make family movies, but then the other half of him wants it to be toilet humor.
Yeah.
And it's like they don't meet. So 50 First Dates, where on the one hand you're like, they're really cute together. He and Drew, they have a really, really nice chemistry. The other part of you is like, oh, and now there's like a whale vomiting all over Rob Schneider. And it's like, it's hard. And that's every time I wanted to write. If you're here, you already know what's happening.
By the way, wasn't he good in the Meyerowitz stories?
Oh, yes.
Adam Sandler.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think everybody was really terrific in that.
I still haven't seen this, unfortunately.
I'm a huge Noah Baumbach fan.
It's awfully good.
Yeah.
And it grabs you from the first scene.
It really does. Which I think is Adam Sandler, right?
Yeah.
In the car.
Trying to get a parking space.
It's unbelievable. And Dustin Hoffman, I know, has had a rough year, but that guy is still just so magnetic.
He's just terrific in it.
Yeah.
Does Adam Sandler... Do you think he has to be talked into making these kind of movies? Because when he's left to his own devices with his own production crew, it seems like the same gang and the same level of effort. Then he comes along with Punch Drunk Love or this movie where he's clearly got talent. He just doesn't care to use, apparently.
Yeah. No, well, you can't argue with success.
No, you're right. You're right.
But it's a two-part...
You tell him he should be doing loftier things.
But it's a two-part. One bit of it is that his production company employs a lot of people.
It does.
And you will hear some of them talk about the fact that they really rely on him. People like Alan Covert.
And he is loyal.
He's
very loyal to his friends. Yeah. So there are people who, and I have friends who've worked with them, where it's like they'll call and say, are you doing another movie right now? And, this is the thing, is I do think that he's fiercely loyal. In a similar way to someone like Will Ferrell. And I think Will Ferrell and Adam Sandler are kind of, they're kindred in that I think they're both very talented. What they need is someone else's film. Only because then I feel like there's someone there to cut them off. Will Ferrell's biggest problem is someone has to say, stop now.
Yeah. If he would do more Stranger Things or
Stranger Than Fiction.
Right.
Everything must go.
Stranger Than Fiction, yes.
Right.
That's the thing. Even Elf. Like, Elf is a great, it really is.
Yeah,
and he
very
can
good in
sing,
that.
he can dance, he can do all kinds of stuff. He just really should not be left to his own devices.
Yeah.
And someone has to come in. And I just don't think that there's a no man. That's the problem.
It's like Kanye West.
Yeah, right. But I feel even sometimes with the Judd Apatow stuff, I feel like it can be that way at times.
No, I agree. There's a
There
bit of
has
group.
to
Judd
be.
Apatow himself needs a.
Yes, but that's it. Like, you almost wish that someone would just say, okay, I'm going to take this and I'm going to make it better. Because if you don't have final say, or if we can get an editor in there who is not, it's like there are some people that just can't throw anything away.
Yeah.
And I get that. And we hear this a lot when we're listening to Q&As. There are times when there's a movie that happened last year that we did not care for, but we were in this Q&A listening, and I started to understand why they didn't cut things out. It's because they had spent so much time. And I kind of realized That's the problem,
Yeah.
is that they weren't willing to cut out. And had they done that, it would have been more successful. But I also understood there was no one there to say, I don't care if this took 100 people and 70,000 hours. It's not good.
Yeah.
And you need that. Who were we talking about the other day? There was a writer-director who you said, I wish that he would let other people direct his stuff. I can't remember. James Cameron, maybe.
No, I have a fantasy.
Oh.
I have a fantasy that James Cameron, who is one of the most skillful filmmakers of our
I
generation.
won't argue with that.
You know, he knows how to put a film together. And he has interesting ideas, too. My fantasy is that when he's done writing his draft of the script, don't shoot it yet, give it to John Sayles, and let John Sayles do a polish or a rewrite on that screenplay, and then shoot that.
That would be awesome.
That's my fantasy.
That would be awesome.
And again, I say it with respect.
Yeah.
No, I know
Yeah.
exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way about a few other filmmakers that I don't probably need to name that just don't have a no man. And honestly, if I'm being honest, we can bring this all right back around to CinemaSins, because if Chris wasn't here to keep me in check, the videos would have 20%, they'd be 20% full of just bullshit that's not funny that made Jeremy giggle and no one else. And because I don't have that self-editing without a partner to do it for me.
But that's why you need people that you trust. That's the whole point of having people that you trust. When my dad, if I write something and my dad reads it and he doesn't like it, I'm not offended. I want to know why.
Right.
And I want to know what I could change. In the same way, I edit his stuff. And, you know, because
And she's a really good editor.
and a lot of times it's just because I know what he's trying to say or what he's trying to get. Like, I don't really know how good I'd be at editing other people. I help friends out sometimes, but because I know his voice so well, I know what he was trying to do and what he was trying to say, and I can reword it and get it where it needs to go. But part of it is just, that's always been how we do things, is my dad will write something. It used to be he'd write it, he'd print it out, and at dinner, he'd read through it. You know, we'd finish eating and then he'd read it and he'd say to me and my mom, what do you like, what don't you like? And he would sit and he'd make notes.
I wish my dad would have done this with his sermons all throughout my childhood.
But that's, I mean, it's funny, but it's true. Like, my dad has always been very good about asking. And I think that it takes a lot of discipline, but also you can't have an ego about certain things.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, you can. You have people like Kanye West in this world. You have people who seem to be overflowing with ego, who are still successful. But in general, I think to be successful as a creative person, you have to start checking your ego. Whether you're a director, a writer, an actor, you have to be able to be told no and roll it in to what you're trying to accomplish. Because otherwise, then you're not making art. You're just impressing yourself with creativity.
And even you say, if you write something and it makes Jeremy giggle, that's great.
Yeah,
that doesn't make it art.
That's great. but that's part of it, of understanding that you then go, okay, that made us laugh, but is that going to make anyone else laugh?
Right.
And as I say, that's important. It's important to understand that not everything is going to work.
It's crucial.
And and I never I've grown up with him. I didn't know that the way he did things was different to other people. So I never realized, there are a lot of things. I didn't know how hard it was to use a teleprompter because he makes it look really easy. I didn't know how hard it was to do voiceovers because he always made it look really easy. And they'd let me, I always try to give praise to the folks at Entertainment Tonight because I grew up there and they were very kind and very patient with me, always. And they would let me go and do anything, anywhere. Always.
Really?
So from things like my dad would be recording in the booth, they'd let me sit in the corner.
Oh.
And it's not a big booth, but like I could just sit down there and watch him, and that was fine. I go down on stage when he'd be filming, and they'd let me. They'd put me on an Apple box, and they'd let me hold onto the camera, and I thought that I was definitely shooting the show.
That's awesome.
They did all of that, and they were incredibly kind, and I'm so, so, so grateful to all of them for that, because they were always like that with me. They still are when I see them. Because I'm baby Jessie. I'm the first kid of the E.T. kids. I was the very first one born. So my dad was at Entertainment Tonight when he got the phone call from my mom saying that this is going to happen.
Oh, wow.
So, because he started at E.T. in '82, and I'm born '86. So he was there first. And so part of it is definitely I'm the E.T. kid, but also just kind people. And they would just let me go with you everywhere and watch everything. But I didn't know people weren't as good as my dad.
Right.
And it was a real rude awakening when I went, oh, not everybody treats everyone that way. My dad treats everyone really in a very kind and respectful way. He always introduces himself when he walks into any room. He meets the crew. He says hi. You know, everyone is a human being. And he acts like that. And I did not know other people do not behave in the same way. And it was a rude awakening. When
a lot of those people didn't have
wow.
fathers as good as you did, though.
I lucked out big time. But
that's why good people beget good people.
Yeah.
That's how it tends to work, I think.
Yeah,
common question that you'll probably get a lot, but I'm going to have another one after that I don't think you probably get a lot. Favorite movie, obviously, but what is your what is also your favorite review
Of my own?
Yeah, of your own.
Well, my favorite movie is Casablanca.
Yeah,
and it has been since I was a teenager, and I first saw it on a theater screen.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was a Bogart revival.
Wow.
And during the counterculture years, late 60s, early 70s, that generation adopted him as their favorite anti-hero, which, of course, he is in Casablanca. That's part of the appeal of the film. The enduring appeal is that he is an anti-hero. And I fell in love with it at first sight, and I've never fallen out of love. And I now know more intellectually why it works as well as it does. That it has a magical screenplay that incorporates drama, suspense, romance, comedy, music, and timeliness, plus a point of view.
Yeah.
It has a point of view.
And is it true that the people who made that movie didn't think they were making a good movie?
No.
That's not true?
No, that's not true.
Okay.
They didn't know they were making what would become a classic.
Yeah.
I think they knew they were working with a great script and a meticulous director in Michael Curtiz, who could be a son of a bitch, but who knew how to shoot film. The cinematographer Arthur Edison won an Oscar for his camera work on it. You know, it's a good-looking film.
Yeah, I like it. I know that Citizen Kane, Casablanca, and Godfather get thrown around as the number one movie of most people and everything. I like Casablanca better than Citizen Kane, but I mean, you know, who cares?
It's a warmer film.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's a warmer film.
Yeah. And then what's the favorite review that you've ever done?
Oh, I don't know.
Isn't it romantic?
Yeah.
Just for,
Really?
for saving time.
After the fact, yes, when it got all that notoriety. I did the visual equivalent of that on Entertainment Tonight one night. They used to show me sitting in a faux movie theater, and you would look over my shoulder at a screen for a clip of the movie, and then the camera would turn to me and I would start to speak. The movie was Police Academy 3. And as the clip went on, I stood up and went, and I walked out.
Oh.
I walked out of frame. So I didn't actually give it a verbal review.
I think you did beat the
Yeah,
Guinness Book of World Records with that one, because you just said and then left.
I don't know if it was audible what I said, but it was really a sight gag.
Yeah.
But what's the one everybody remembers?
Transylvania 6 5000.
Oh my God, I saw this when I was 8.
Yeah. And I put on the old Glenn Miller record, Pennsylvania 6 5000, which the title alludes to, for those anyone old enough to recognize it. And so I had them play that, and while I just sort of swayed back and forth. And then when it came to the right moment, I said over the recording, Transylvania 6 5000 stinks. that was the entire. And I have people still come up.
A lot of people come over and go, "Do you remember when you did
People still come up to me about that review. I was kind of proud.
So good.
That's fantastic. That was one of those early movies. Even as a child, you like everything when you're 8 years old.
Sure, and you're allowed.
And I was making excuses to like that movie and everything, but there was something inside me That was like, was that really what I was hoping for? Like, it was such a cool title. It felt like, and then it seemed fun, I guess. And then like a year later, you're like, no, that wasn't very good at all. Yeah.
What do you say your favorite movies are? Because it's always like the world's hardest question.
I think we've all gone on record at least once on the podcast, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, mine is The Matrix.
Yeah, yours is The Matrix.
I always say Back to the Future.
Yeah.
I guess you would say that's my favorite of all time. Then I'm in that trifecta of Citizen Kane, Casablanca, and Godfather. I always say Godfather is my favorite.
Sure.
I got to go with 2001: A Space Odyssey.
That's such a good one.
I'm as we say in the South, I'm eaten up by Stanley Kubrick. I was watching Spartacus last night.
I was watching it too.
Really?
That movie's a lot longer than I realized.
It is way long.
I haven't seen.
It's
any
all
of
hero
that.
shots of Kirk Douglas looking out.
Man, it's such a Kubrick film though, man. Like
I know.
I had never really seen his style when I'd seen it before.
It's amazing. You can see Kubrick's style transposed onto. It's totally Kirk Douglas's movie, though, right?
Oh yeah.
But you can see those crane shots, lifting up when they're training and stuff like that, and those big wide shots behind.
Yep.
And
Spartacus.
and he was a replacement director.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was for hire, basically, right?
Yeah, because Kirk Douglas wasn't getting along with Anthony Mann, who
Right.
they had hired. And so Kubrick came on at the 11th hour. And I don't know if there's any non-Kubrick footage in the finished film. I should know that, but I don't. But it's a film that he had to sort of find a way to ingratiate himself with the cast and crew, which was not 100% successful, apparently. But the end result is really good.
Oh yeah, it's gorgeous, and you can see some of that in there. I think it's his last movie that he didn't write and really get involved with. From then on, I guess it was Lolita and onward.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, 2001. As much as I love something like The Shining and Even Eyes Wide Shut and Clockwork Orange, 2001 is really the pinnacle for my love of him.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's such a good one. I want to take it.
See, they're all good movies. That's why I don't think anyone can truly pick. And we'll all have the categories of like, well, I guess this is my favorite, but this one makes me laugh the most, but this one makes me cry, but this one is my favorite since I was a kid. Yeah.
Paths of Glory just devastates me.
Yeah.
That's an extraordinary movie.
It's amazing. I haven't done this, but I have this idea to watch Paths of Glory and Full Metal Jacket almost back to back, because it's so odd to me how different those films are, not just separated by time, just the perspective of it. Because Full Metal Jacket is, as we've talked about it before, is almost agnostic, right? About war, and I don't know. It's just fascinating to get into all that.
Is there a movie past 2000? Can you name a few movies past the year of 2000 that you would like to recommend? I know that you just recently came out with a list of top 100 movies in the 20th century.
It was a good list. I saw it on
Twitter.
Twitter.
Very good list. I think it ends at 1994 with Pulp Fiction. Maybe one after that.
Fargo was
Fargo.
yeah,
Fargo is. Is there anything past the year of 2000 that you think could make that list?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just have to think about it. I told you I have no short-term memory.
Right. Same here.
The Motorcycle Diaries.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a film I really, truly love.
This is the one about Che Guevara, right?
Yeah, exactly. By Walter Salles.
Yeah.
Who came to my class and was fascinating.
Really?
Fascinating,
He really
yes. He made that journey 3 times.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Once to scout locations, once to...
It was a whole Megillah of a thing.
Yeah, and then the 3rd time to shoot it. And
but your 2 favorite directors are Jeff Nichols and Alexander Payne in terms of now.
Oh, wow,
yeah.
wow.
Mud is a great movie.
Yeah, it is.
And what's funny is when it came out in the spring of that year, Matthew McConaughey hadn't had his reconnaissance yet. So there I am trying to recommend this movie to people, and they don't say who made it. They say, who's in it?
Yeah.
I said, well, Matthew McConaughey, and they'd say, oh.
You remember the
It actually
lost,
turned people away.
But it got lost because it was around the same time as Dallas Buyers Club.
No. Then what happened in the fall? First, he did that great cameo in Wolf of Wall Street.
Right. Yeah.
Then he did Dallas Buyers Club.
Yeah.
and I'm maybe forgetting something else.
No, it was those two because everybody was
True
focused on
Detective was
Dallas
around
Buyers
that
Club.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so Mud didn't get swept up
Right.
in that. It got sort of left behind. And I'll tell you this, during that award season, I was at some luncheon or other, and he was there. I'd never met him.
Independent Spirit Awards. You said.
And I put myself in his path and said hello and shook his hand. And I said, I just want you to know Mud is my favorite movie of the year. He looked me in the eye. He said, Mud is the best movie I've ever made.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's, now that's the work of Jeff Nichols. The only man you will hear in 21st century America say that his role model was Mark Twain for that film.
Wow.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Alexander Payne is one of my heroes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love Descendants.
Oh, yeah.
I love
Nebraska.
I love almost everything he's done.
Yeah. He's a big
I even
favorite of
I
our show.
even liked Downsizing.
You did?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think any of
still
us have
haven't
seen
seen
it,
it, yeah.
actually.
It's another one. We saw it in Telluride, and we had no idea. Alexander is one of the people my dad has become friendly with. He didn't want to, but they can't help it. They love each other, and they really, when they get talking film, they're just the happiest campers.
Awesome.
And one of the things about Alexander that makes him who he is he has said on more than one occasion, it's okay if you don't like the movie. And he said that to us regarding Downsizing. It's okay if you don't like the movie. And my dad came over to me, he goes, only Alexander. He's the only person who would come over and say, don't worry, it's okay, it's all right.
That's fantastic.
And it's a good movie. It's not a great movie, it's not one of his best, but it's in terms of talking about things that are different and interesting, this is really different.
I find it very moving.
And there are moments.
And,
it's as a whole not my favorite, but the pieces I feel like are worth it at least.
Yeah.
And then you love Richard Linklater.
Yeah. Boyhood.
You like the one.
Bad News Bears.
Also a great film. Also a great film.
The Newton Boys.
Yeah. Might as well make another appearance, right?
Everybody wants some.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. That was
Yeah.
that was a
Like that
lot of
very
fun.
much.
Yeah.
And
He only keeps me because I remember what he likes.
That's right.
It's the only reason. It's because I can remember everything.
she serves a function.
I do. I do. Those are your three that like.
Yeah,
for
but
you,
there are others I ought to be remembering that I'm not.
Yeah, no, but
Paul
as
Thomas Anderson,
filmmakers-
would that be?
I run hot and cold with
Yeah.
him.
Really?
Yeah, I hear that.
I
hear that often.
I hear that a lot too.
I feel like I would I'd have the same sort of deal with Alexander Payne if I ever got to meet him. Just listening to his commentary on election, I was already a fan of him, but when I actually will watch election with the commentary
Sure.
more than I watch it regular, and like he just talking about illuminating things about a movie that you didn't know about and everything. He will tell you all this stuff that I never thought about this before. And it's in regards to election, he's talking about Matthew Broderick running around the track. He's like, I have this theme of circles all the way through this movie. People running around in circles, and this is what I want, Mr. McAllister to be doing throughout the movie.
Have you
and I'm
seen?
like, wow.
Have you listened to the track on Citizen Ruth?
I haven't. Oh, I'd love to hear that.
Oh man, it's 10 years after it was made.
Oh, wow.
He and Jim Taylor, his writing partner, and Laura Dern all sit down together to watch the movie after 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And that's the commentary track. And it is fascinating. Just as Cameron Crowe did that with Ione Skye and John Cusack for Say Anything.
Oh,
They
wow.
all hadn't seen
Yeah.
it in something like 10 years.
Wow.
That's when it works. It drives us a little bit crazy when you get a DVD, and because now they have to have all these extras. It's a huge part of it. But if you just made the movie, and then you have to go in, there's going to be a couple. There'll be a few things like, oh, in this scene, it's sort of like those forced bloopers that they put in at the end of every comedy.
Yeah.
When it's not a blooper is you don't know. A blooper is not just suddenly going. No, it's funny when it's real,
Right.
And it can drive you nuts. But these 10-year ones that you've had a chance to listen to or be a part of, they're really fun.
Or the most extreme example, Steven Soderbergh interviewed Mike Nichols about several of his movies, and that's the commentary track. They did them for The Graduate. They did it for something else.
Wow.
But the one that is fascinating is Catch-22.
Oh,
It's 35 years after Mike Nichols made Catch-22.
Yeah.
Not a movie I ever loved, and I
Right.
still don't.
Right.
But this conversation they have is mesmerizing.
Wow.
And part of it is that Nichols will admits that he was cocky. And he said the hubris we had. He said, you know, he and Nestor Almendros decided they were only shooting from 11 to 2 every day in Mexico because they wanted an even light, consistent light. He says, imagine, you know, he says it on himself. He tells it on himself. So that's a great one.
Before I'm trying to remember the different ones. The woman who directed Brothers.
Oh, yes.
You love her.
Yes. Susanna Bier.
You love her.
That film, Brothers. The original, not the American remake.
Yeah, not the American.
The original Danish film.
The real one.
Which has Connie Nielsen in it.
Who he loves. Big time. One of his crushes.
That's an extraordinary film. Extraordinary film. Don't think twice.
Oh, we love Don't Think Twice.
Mike Birbiglia's film.
Great movie. Great movie.
Yeah.
Who's the one that you saw on Telluride? Is she Polish?
Agnieszka Holland.
Yeah, there's Agnieszka Holland, who you love a lot of her stuff.
Yes.
You love Guillermo del Toro.
Yes.
The thing I find with Guillermo is even if you don't like the movie, you will find things about it
Pan's
to
Labyrinth.
love and appreciate.
Pan's Labyrinth.
Oh,
You know?
yeah.
And I've told
High on
friends
my
who
list.
said that they didn't. I've had friends who've seen Shape of Water and said, I don't get it. I go, that you don't have to get it, but you must
You can
look
still
at this.
see the talent.
You must
Yeah.
look at this and think this is beautiful.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you're lying.
Yeah.
It's beautiful to look at. You don't have to. Some people are creeped out.
I'm a big fan of
whatever.
Mike Lee.
Yeah, he loves Mike
yeah.
Lee. Happy-go-lucky.
Well, so many.
So many.
But I have to tell you that a couple of years ago when Mr. Turner came out, friends, it was beginning of award season or middle of award season in LA. And a friend said to me, don't watch it on a screener. You have to see this on a big screen in a good sized theater. And we caught the last screening in LA of that movie. If there were justice, not only would that movie have been celebrated, but Timothy Spall, who plays the great English painter, Turner, would be an Oscar nominee for that film. It is
so good.
absolutely staggering performance. He's always good, but this is a staggering performance.
Wow.
What do you think about the story we hear coming out of Cannes where everybody's seen the new Lars von Trier movie and there's 100
Well, that's their
walkouts?
problem.
Yeah. Yeah, so you would just never go is what it would
No.
be.
I like Dogtown. I like Breaking the Waves. That was the first one of his that I saw.
Yeah.
That introduced me to Emily Watson.
Yeah.
And with Stellan Skarsgård. So I don't hate him on sight at all. But from what I've read about this, and I just read sort of the first paragraph of those dispatches from Cannes, it's like, nah, I think I'll live a nice full life without sex.
Yeah.
We do enjoy getting the emails, and he loves showing them because it's usually IndieWire. They have the best sort of headlines. You don't have to read the story; you just read the headline, and you go, "Okay, all right."
Have you ever been at a festival and just gotten up and walked out?
No, I don't walk out.
Yeah, I have the same sort of philosophy about this. I feel like if you've gone in to watch a movie, then you're going to watch it to the end. And,
Yeah.
Tell them about Black
except for
Swan.
one.
All right.
Tell them about Black Swan.
Well, what's to tell? Jesse and I were at Telluride, and we saw like the first or second screening of Black Swan. And midway through, I never look at my watch. I don't do those things. Midway through, we turned to each other, which we don't do either. And we both just went, our jaws were hanging slack.
The only way you could describe it.
Oh, yes, it was
We
the
looked
the
like
producer's
the
moment.
audience
The audience
during
and Mel Brooks,
Springtime
the
for
producer.
Hitler.
Oh, yeah.
It's the only way you can describe the way we both looked at each other was just this like, are you kidding?
Are you kidding me?
Is this real life?
Went to a party that night, and Darren Aronofsky shows up and marches straight over to me and says, what'd you think of the film?
If I can give any kind of PSA in life, someone, if they like whatever it is, they will tell you. if you have to ask, it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
An actor should not get, every time someone comes in, so what did you think? If he likes it, he's going to find you.
Yeah.
If he likes it, he's going to come over and say, by the way, I wanted to tell you, great job, great
an
film.
unsung movie of a couple of years ago, Ramin Barani's 99 Homes.
Yeah.
With Michael Shannon and Andrew Garfield.
Wow.
I saw this.
Yeah.
How in the hell? I saw this. It's fantastic. Andrew
really
Garfield
good.
Disappeared off the map. It had a distributor who wasn't really solvent, apparently, and they didn't know what to do with it. The LA Critics, I'm proud to say, the LA Critics gave Best Supporting Actor to Michael Shannon.
Oh, excellent.
And he was really touched.
I'll watch anything he's in.
Yeah, he's great.
I'll watch anything he's in. I love Let's Go to Prison. I love that movie.
I kind of have a weird guilty pleasure with that movie as well.
See, we don't do guilty pleasures because we're not guilty. So I have no problem. I love Let's Go to Prison. I have no problem.
See,
with
I
that.
love Naked and Afraid, but I do feel guilty about it.
So I call it a guilty
that's
pleasure.
Fair. That's fair. I think that's fair. No, I love terrible movies.
Yeah,
it's like one of my favorite
sometimes
things.
there's something somehow scratches that itch.
Every year there's a handful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's only a handful
Yeah.
No.
that really, really stick with me.
Yeah.
You love a lot of foreign films. There are a lot that we can't remember the names of, but there are a lot of great, again, film festival. That's why I tell people, look, almost every single neighborhood has a film festival now.
Yeah.
In your town, wherever you are, just look and see what's there. Because you can see all kinds of stuff, and we've seen so many great foreign films.
When I was at Telluride, I went in knowing very little about A Separation. I was like, well, it's a film that just hits you in the gut.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen everything Asghar Farhadi has done since then, but I've seen as much as I can.
Okay, so do you guys have anything else? I've got a million questions, but we can't keep going.
Yeah, I think we should
That's what
very
dinner's
full.
for, guys.
Exactly. I would thank the Maltins for coming in
Yes.
here.
Thank you, guys.
This is a treat for us. We don't get a chance to do these kind of interviews very often, but we're glad that you're gracious with your time and everything.
We're happy to be here. We're flattered.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Thank you very much. All right, well, if you want to go to Sincast presented by CinemaSins on Facebook or SoundCloud or Twitter or anything you want to comment about this episode, please do. That'd be great.
Bring it. Tons of comments on the
Let's
last episode.
tell everybody again where we can find your guys' podcast and Twitters.
So our podcast is called Maltin On Movies, and it's through Nerdist. It's on iTunes and Spotify, like 17,000 different places.
Yes.
I have found. So Maltin On Movies. My dad is at Leonard Maltin on Twitter and on Instagram, and I'm at Jessie Maltin, same places, and LeonardMaltin.com.
Yeah, definitely worth a listen. I listen to it all the time. We've got a lot of great
it's
guests.
really,
on
really
there.
good, yeah.
Get really
Thanks,
down
guys.
deep. Some people I would never think too, like Patton Oswalt and Bill Hader, know so much about movies.
So
Yeah.
much.
And it's like I always liked those guys, but I didn't know they were that deep into
Yeah.
it.
Oh,
you know?
they are.
Yeah, so go and listen to
He
that
brings
stuff.
it out of people.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah.
thing. They meet him and they're so excited to just
Like, I gotta bring up
movie
my
nerd.
game.
Yeah, they love it.
That'll do it for this week. It's Chris Atkinson, Jeremy Scott, Barrett Scher, Jessie Maltin, and Leonard Maltin. We'll see you next time.